Hello and welcome to Next 2.0 on WQLN PBS NPR. Next is produced by the Public's Voice Media. I'm your host, Marcus Atkinson. If you want to know more about Next 2.0, you can go to Facebook and like the page. You can follow us on Instagram at Next 2.0 Erie. There you can keep up with upcoming show promos, events, and clips about what's next for our communities and our democracy. Thank you so much for tuning in. And now, on to the show.
Hi, I'm Marc Blount. I'm your guest host on Next 2.0, and we're here today. We're going to talk about James Sherrod, former director of MLK, and his passing has affected the community a lot and the organization a lot, and he was a dear friend of mine, and we wanted to take the time to send our condolences out to the family, and we want to also take the time to share with you our thoughts about Mr. James Sherrod, Executive Director of MLK. And I also brought along a guest to share more insight on that, Mr. Kevin Arrington.
How are we doing today?
Oh, we're doing great. Hey, thanks for coming on short notice.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure talking to you. So I want to start off by saying my experience with James Sherrod. When I first opened my Subways in the early 90s, young man at the time, he was the youth director at the MLK. And he came over to the store I had just opened, and he introduced himself to me. And we had a relationship there. It was James Sherrod. And he wanted to give me an award for, I guess, Young Business of the Year or Business of the Year. And I was touched by that because to me, I was just opening a Subway store. To him, he saw a bigger picture. And I was always indebted, and we began our relationship there, not only talking business, community, we just shared as friends and as Black men, our experiences here, and we built with each other from time to time, not on a daily basis, but on enough where I think we both could call each other friends. And that's what I respected about him. He was always accessible. He was always analytical, straightforward. He didn't play. You didn't have to worry about a hidden agenda with James. And that's what I always respected about him. Whenever I called or whenever he called, I believe we were always there for each other in that aspect. Kevin, what was it like tell me your experience with James?
So I had the pleasure of working with Mr. Sherrod since 2019. And at first, I thought the man was mean. You know, very firm, very direct, and sometimes you don't know how to take that. However, as I began working with him and having more experience, I could see that he was doing a lot more mentoring, you know, in that quote unquote meanness to just try to make sure that we were doing things the right way. I worked under him very closely as far as writing grants. We started project work for the facilitation of the renovation of the whole Martin Luther King Center through the Capitol campaign, the beginning of that. It was just a great body of work that we started together that I'm honored to have that experience with Mr. Sherrod.
And I want to say to the audience that from my time in Erie, what I've noticed, because I knew at the time it was James took over the center from Mr. Fred Rush. I knew him, not Rush, Fred Williams. And I knew Bobby Harrison at the time at JFK, and I knew Dorothy Lockett. I was good friends with all of them. And James was the first of the younger people to take the baton up as far as outside of those individuals. You had Denny was before Dorothy Lockett, so I met Denny first at Booker T. Washington. And James was one of the first young people from here that took over or became executive director. You know, he might have been influenced by the centers, grew up there, and he wasn't necessarily the architect of those things, but he was the benefactor of those things. And then now he's adding his flavor over to it. As in some type of ways, we're looking at the current transitional or interim director, Marcus Atkinson's kind of doing the same thing. He was a benefactor of that center, and now you're steering the direction of the future of that center. You get to give back to that center. And I always respected James from that aspect. And also Chantel is doing the same thing. And some of my audience might see them as, and rightfully so, Mr. Sherrod, Mr. Hilliard. I saw them as young people at the time when I got here. And to see this evolution, to see this maturation was a nice thing to see.
So it's funny you say that. I call Mr. Sherrod that because out of respect, but when we were alone, he was definitely James. So in any kind of public forum, I always gave him that respect because it's what he deserved. But you're absolutely right. You know, those gentlemen you just mentioned, one thing about me, strangely, I never knew any of our elder leaders is, besides, I didn't know Ben Wiley. I didn't know Bobby Harrison well. I didn't know some of those other leaders very well. But, you know, I had the pleasure to work under Mr. Sherrod, and it gave me the semblance of old, though, you know, as a tradition. So I respected the man highly. I respected the work. You mentioned Marcus Atkinson. You know, he was it was paramount in some of those early conversations that we were having, you know, with Mr. Sherrod back when he was transitioning to president. And right now, for our vision, we're at the center. All we're doing is trying to keep the work going, make sure the community gets the services that they, you know, were needing, that he was providing, and just keep the memory alive, you know, of a man that devoted so much to the community and rarely asked for any accolades in return.
So, is the transition going smoothly? Because one of the things that happens in this thing, you go to the barbershops, you go to beauty salons, and you get your texts, what they going to do, blah, blah, and all this type of thing. And one respect that I have for James, or that I have respect for the centers and organizations like that, is that a lot of times we have order in place. We're not chaotic. We're not putting this together as we go. And I think a lot of people don't give us the credit or give our organizations enough credit to understand that we could walk and chew gum at the same time, and that they had a board. Their board, you can never prepare for this. I don't want to trivialize this as that. But at the same time, I want to honor it by saying this is not the first time that they had to do this. And this is won't be the last, unfortunately. But this organization is a strong organization, and it handled its business, and I would like to say kudos on a smooth transition on that.
Thanks.
So far.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, we've got good leadership. And with that being said, Mr. Sherrod's leadership was very matter of fact and direct. So we are still following the game plan that we have been working and following. So with that said, we're still going to do all the things we have to do. The King Dinner's still going to go off without any problems. We're still going to have all the celebrations, and we're still going to provide services to the community.
You should see Kevin's game face when he says this right here, man. I mean, it's like the next play, not trivializing the situation, but that was James. That right there, that James was always straightforward, never really kind of like emotional, but he'd get mad. Now, I'm not going to say he didn't get his mad, and James was nothing to play with or be messed with, but I would say that he was straightforward, he was fair, and he was about that business. And that was one thing I always respected about James. But again, going back to the MLK, because the mission is still there. The men are important and the women, but it's the mission. It's the mission that we have to do that. We have to continue to do that. We have to stay focused, because in that mission, we have organizations or a board and staff. Kudos to the staff, because we had to open the next day. Kudos to the staff. They have to still do what the mission statement says we're going to do. And they kept the lights on and they moved on. Chantel, you're doing the same thing, and we can appreciate that. Mr. Gary Horton is doing it at the Seam Center. It's happening with Miss Samela at JFK. And I'm with an organization where I had a CEO pass away right during the holidays, and I had to walk and chew gum at the same time, not trivializing it. But the job is still the job. The mission is still the mission. And again, that's a testament to those that walk before us, because we're prepared to take the baton. And sometimes, whether we're prepared or not, the most important thing is we're willing to pick up the baton and move on. And
I think that's a part of our community, though. I think that's a part of our community tradition, our community heritage, where we've never had a choice. So when things happen, we respond and we jump in line to make sure the outcomes are needed. Because no one here plans for, their own demise. And in our work of social services and community work, we're always in a crisis mode, fixing people's crises and things like that. So we rarely think about our own lives when it comes to those things and keeping them in step. However, I will say this is just another, day at the office, making sure that things happen on time, on schedule, and to the best of their ability. And I will say one thing that James did teach me, and you said my game face, I now have frank, open, and honest discussions, with everybody. So if people want to know about the center, we're always open for having people come on in, volunteer, help us out, and support, and not just the Martin Luther King Center, but the Booker T. Washington Center, the John F. Kennedy Center, the Urban Erie UECDC. We need all these centers to be supported because of the work that they're doing in the community is important.
Yeah, that's good to know. That's real good to know. Also, tell us about some of the things that are going. In honor of James, what is going on today as far as the programs at MLK?
So not to give too much, but the MLK is going through a once-in-a-lifetime transformation to where we had plans to renovate the entire facility. And so I don't know of any other organization that has those plans, that were moving and in place. But we started with renovation for our event center. We did some work on our roof, replaced the roof, our auxiliary room. The gymnasium is next, services for the kids. And so when we get done, the Martin Luther King Center will be a totally new structure inside, 21st century, ready for the next challenges for the next generation. So that's one huge legacy that he left behind. But he also left behind his compassion and caring. In our organization, we've got 7 different departments: housing, feeding people, senior citizens, daycare, after school, education. And so those things that are the cornerstones and pillars of our community, they're not moving. They're not going anywhere, and they will be permanently etched right there at 312 Chestnut Street.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. Because a lot of times we forget what these centers offer, and I'm always going to promote what do we do? Because you always hear at these town hall meetings what's not going on and all that. And I always say, don't allow what you don't know to describe something or make it a reality that's just not true. The reality of it is there's a lot of things going on in our community. There's a lot of things going on at these centers. Now, whether you take advantage of those things, that's up to you. And these centers are there for you. I think MLK has been part of the Erie community for a long time and doing some great work over there. And you don't get a lot of credit. What you'll get is a lot of blame. You'll hear what we don't have versus what we do have. And as you said, maybe that's because of the crisis or the task at hand in the population sometimes that we deal with. And we don't have the time for accolades. What we make time for is the work. And I want you all to understand, again, this is why I say, the James family, you have my deepest thoughts and condolences and prayers. Sometimes we forget that these people are people because we say they belong to us, or because we're so dedicated in community work, that gets lost. After meetings, after meetings, after meetings, this is time away from our families. And not just times away from our families. To do this type of work, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know, it's hard not to personalize this. It's hard not to feel poverty if we're dealing in poverty. It's hard not to absorb some of the pain, some of the apathy, and all this. And in spite of that, move on to the mission at hand and keep your head up in spite of some of the barriers that we face. It's not like, during the holidays, everybody is giving. Everybody, the hungry, as far as you can find a meal, everybody throwing dinners, everybody doing these type of things, and rightfully so. Everybody's giving coats in the wintertime. But this problem is a year-round thing. The sympathy is not as there. I'm always amazed at people that trounce on people that's in bad shape or people that's not in financial shape and calling them all kind of other things, and especially during this administration, where you could say stuff about the homeless, stuff about the people with the SNAP benefits, stuff about them. But then during the holidays, all of a sudden you find honor in the work that you could serve them some turkey, that you could do whatever. And that's a big statement right there, in my opinion. That's a big statement. And James was about, going back to him, putting in that work. And I want to speak for a minute as far as the transitional team director or interim director, Marcus Atkinson. Marcus has been feeding people during the holidays for a while, and he don't really advertise that, or he don't really do that. He does the work. So I trust the board, and I trust Marcus in this transition, or whatever they decide to do what's best for the MLK and what's best for the community, because I think that goes hand in hand with the West Side, because the MLK was there before the West Side coalitions and the Bayfront organizations. They was there, and they've been a constant, and they're going to be there. So again, Kevin and you all and the staff, congratulations on a smooth transition. And if there's anything that our public could do, you opened up the doors for that, and we appreciate it. Anything I could do, we're a phone call away from that. And again, to the public, we're gonna miss James. You just miss a person like him.
So I want to say a couple things to what you've said. You're right. So with the work that the community centers does, I believe that a lot of the work we do is fastly forgotten. And I wish that's one thing the community could do a lot better of. Like when COVID, for example, when COVID came, and that was just 3-4 years ago when we were still in the COVID, it was the MLK Center that was leading that charge. It was the MLK Center and Mr. Sherrod that was putting everything together, making sure vaccinations were happening all across our most porous zip code. It was the MLK and the MCIC putting those things together for our community with the help of the health department and all the hospitals, because they came to our organizations to reach our people. And that's the biggest thing people need to understand, is not to forget the social service agencies, as Mr. Blount said here, outside of the holidays. Because after Thanksgiving and Christmas, January and February is still going to exist, and people still need help. Another thing about Mr. Sherrod was the kind of person that did everything. The man would fill any void, as far as from driving the van, mopping the floor. He was not your typical executive director. So for those that try to come and fill those shoes, you got to be ready to do some work. And we all have to step up to the challenge of doing some work. I'd rather do work than worry about an accolade. I'd rather do work and get a result to help somebody than worry about getting a pat on the back. I'd rather do work and put some food in somebody's kitchen than rather collect a check. Because when COVID came, Mr. Sherrod called me and we volunteered. And I drove the van. I delivered meals. I did all those things. I went to that place, the MLK. Mr. Sherrod would be the first person there, the last person out. So if we want to step in the shoes like this in our community, we've got to be willing to do some hard work.
That I hope those that want to turn in an application, or those that want to send in their acknowledgement that they want to fill these shoes, understand what he just said. Because from a distance, things can look one way, and the reality of it is this way. Because one thing I know, that at the time, as he said, it's a lot of volunteer thing. You got to want to do this. And if you don't want to do it and your heart's not in it, and you think this is a 9 to 5, you got it wrong. You got it wrong. If you think there's a lot of appreciation to this job, you got it wrong. This is a humble job. Hopefully you could get a visionary in there to carry on this legacy and expand the legacy a little bit more to their legacy, whatever it may be. So I want to end it on that because that was very powerful, Kevin. That was a very powerful statement, and I wish the MLK family, the best. The West Side, I want to send a shout out to the West Side because MLK was very impactful in that area, and that's Kevin once said. And I got to correct that. Hey, it's Blount. It's not Blount, and they know it. And I say that lovingly, but it is Blount. So to all the audience out there, this is another Next 2.0. This is us wrapping up, and the Marcus probably will be back with you later on. But for right now, this is Marc Blount, and this is Marc Blount saying, peace, happy holidays.
That's all for our show today. Tune in next time for more discussion and analysis with local and national guests. Remember that Next 2.0 streams on Fridays on all major podcast platforms and the fourth Sunday of the month at 4 p.m. on WQLN PBS NPR, which is 91.3 FM. If you want to leave a message, comment, or suggestion for the show, call the Next hotline at 814-240-8816. We look forward to hearing from you. I am Marcus Atkinson. Come and join us again so that you can hear about what's next for our communities and our democracy. Peace.